is called Kenya Kwanza, or is it UDA? It is UDA. Then the coalition is Kenya Kwanza. We're also seeing an attempt to claw back on the very important matter of coalition building. And we made strong recommendations with regard to the office of the registrar of political parties. That instead of leaving it to one person, be a commission, a team. Please do not allow anything different from that. If you are going to face the future elections with a measure of confidence, and if you are going to safeguard multi-party democracy. But ladies and gentlemen, remember, we started, this matter was a product of serious pain and agony and death by Kenyan people. On the streets, a year ago, the culmination, I think, was about April, which is what brought some sense to Kenya Kwanza, and they agreed to discuss. We lost over 72 or thereabouts young Kenyans. We are not even allowed to honor them by having some requiem masses. Remember where we come from, the product. We are actually riding on the lives of Kenyans as we sit here this morning. We can't afford, therefore, to let them down. So our friends from Conrad believe that we should continue to deepen our democratic gains, and so that's a very honorable thing. But there comes a time when, if the political class let down the population, what does the population do? Under our Constitution, those freedoms are guaranteed under Article 37. And so, Kenyans have the freedom to still go back to the streets. And we hope this time, if that happens, particularly if this aggression continues against the basics in our Constitution, then Kenyans should be allowed to do what is in the best interest of this country. We remember our number one clarion call was Gharama ya Maisha. If Jeremiah Kioni was here, I would remind him, his name was Mtu wa Madhuburia. He's carrying, and people would laugh at him and say, what in the world are you trying to demonstrate? Now, we need to tell Kenya Kwanza that revolutions begin sometimes in the streets, sometimes in quiet places. Therefore, if this document is not adopted on the basis as it is, we will then tell them that the bona fides are wanting. There's no good intentions on their part. And we saw, for example, an attempt, and I must thank Stuart Matzayo. But Stuart, forgive me, I called you Zakayo when I came in. If you read the poetry, you can see closeness, Zakayo and Mazayo. But Stuart, by the way, this is becoming our national anthem, Zakayo Shuka. Because when we call our friend governor, a former governor like Kipia, and one of our foremost economists, you begin to see that this is becoming actually now a clarion call, Zakayo Shuka. And he said, on a light note, he said, what is there in a name? Oh, there's everything in a name. This Zakayo Shuka thing is becoming a Kenyan national anthem. So, Stuart, thank you for the remarks that you made. You tried to stem the hemorrhage at the Senate. An attempt to even declare Azimio la Umoja, one Kenya, as not being part of what we discussed. So, you did well. And then they went back to what was originally published. You must stick to that. By the way, I must remind honorable members that this is happening at your own request. Remember when we met at Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Foundation offices, some members felt left out. So it's important that as we move out of this meeting today, everybody will feel encouraged to have useful input to the legislation before Parliament, before both houses, the National Assembly and the Senate. And so allow me then to also tell you the reason I believe this is becoming a national anthem. And Omwami, or my friend Ambetsa, or Paranya, has told you clearly in his mind, and he's also an economist. He's been minister for planning. He knows these things. That you have to prepare yourselves to vote a big no. We know this Finance Bill 2024 is receiving public participation, and it happened the same way. Finance Bill 2023, public participation, over 90% of Kenyans, and 98% said no. Then they went on to implement the very unfortunate taxes, and now you know we went to the streets. As a coalition, we are ready to go back to the streets if that is what it takes. And I hope you are bold enough. I hope you are bold enough if they now go and cause aggression again on public participation. And there are professionals talking about this. Just imagine bringing heavy taxation on bread. Even the little children who have just gone to school will not enjoy their bread with a bit of blue band. They will not. So be ready, ladies and gentlemen. And you know, if you feel a little weak spiritually, that you don't think you can withstand another round of demonstrations, then go eat something strong. We need you. We need you. And this country needs you. So that is my word of encouragement today. So of course we'll be hearing from the economists their perceptions about Finance Bill 2024. May I conclude by making mention of really making some supporting comments on what has happened in the National Assembly with regard to the fake fertilizer scandal. This will not go away. This one will not go away. How many of you believe it won't go away? Because it can. If we're in a democracy and we allow the fake fertilizer scandal just because Linturi has been let off the hook, whether the drafters of the Constitution should have put it differently, like happens in the Senate. That you get those hearings, because there was a possibility of overrunning the recommendations of the 11-member committee. And we thank our teams because they saw this happening and they walked out. So the product that came out of the 11-member committee is really shrouded in uncertainty. Nobody believes it. Kenyans do not believe it. And so, Kenya Kwanza, in a catch 2022. If they think they've gotten away with this one, they haven't. Because the country is watching. Wait until there's a shortfall in the expected harvest levels because of the fake fertilizer. And if you think you can just refund somebody their little whatever they spend on buying the fake fertilizer, and that's it, please remember the environmental damage. Because unless you go and use other things now to reclaim your 1 acre where you planted the unfortunate substance, you may not be able to make headway in terms of expected harvest levels. We have heard from Dr. Net that food prices in Kenya are the same level as Germany, and everybody knows the high cost of living is still here with us. Finally, I want to urge a spirit of solidarity within the coalition. One of the very key things that we negotiated was a need to amend the Constitution itself to make it clear that if you're elected on an ODM ticket and then you are bought off like chicken in the supermarket, all right, and you think your people are not watching, if you feel strong and popular enough, the best thing to do is to expect, after you have gone through the motions, because it is all there. I think Article 103, is it 103 of the Constitution? We need that amended. It is clear. So after that, of course, there must be a by-election, so that we can also stop this hemorrhage and what we call, under that particular heading, fidelity to multi-party democracy. It doesn't make sense to cheat the population. And Kenyans have come of age. Clearly they have. Because I'm sure all of us will be witness to the fact, those, for example, who will have been compromised and by the system, given goodies, sometimes 100,000 shillings, we are told, and then you sell your soul for a song. Kenyans are watching, and they are so unpopular, and we know them. We know them. And I think our colleagues in ODM were the first to suffer that kind of consequence. And I'm sure that today, given a chance, they'll come back running. So let's be ready. Let's be ready. So I want to stop there. And really, I don't know who is the next. I also want to actually recognize Advocate Njiru Ndengwa. He doesn't look very tall, but the man is very tall in the head. He's done very well, done a lot of pro bono matters, including appearing with me in defense of aggression against former governor of Murang'a, our brother Mwango area. So we will be ready. We will fight every inch as we move forward. So I want to encourage you. If you want to be on the right side of history, then don't even imagine you can work in an opposite direction from what your colleagues are trying to do, because then you will stand strong and tall. I think that it's an economic team. I'll hand over, to the master of ceremony the microphone to take us through. But please remember, and those who keep on coming, please remember this is your session, because you want it to be brought on board, so that everybody will say, yes, we were fully briefed on the NADCO report. May God bless you. Thank you. And bless our country.
Let us give our principal another hands of welcome. At this juncture, allow me to invite Mr. Okango to take us through the rest of the program. Karibu sana, Mr. Okango.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. My name is Frederick Okango from the Azimio Secretariat, and I just want to make two quick announcements that is going to help us condense this program. We anticipate that we will be leaving here before lunch, because we are aware that there are other programs. There's a team going to Mathare, and then there's also other members who are going back, particularly the Senate. Now, we have adjusted this program slightly because of the finance bill that we know, if you remember in the last PG, the statement from the coalition was that it was coming with a wave of taxes. And I would want to invite Governor Nderitu Murithi, who is the chair of Azimio Economic Council, just to take us through his views and the views of the Azimio Economic Council on this finance bill. I know the bill has gone through Parliament, and it has been published. However, it is important that the members also understand and note some of the issues that the council feels about it. And then after that, the technical team led by Professor Adam Zolo and Zen have compressed all those bills. They'll do as a presentation of areas that we'll scrutinize and assess in terms of dynamics, and then we shall have finished. So, Karibu Nderitu Murithi, Governor.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, colleagues, good morning. I'll do it from here instead of the podium because I need to work the PowerPoint. I'll try and finish in 10 minutes so that we can get into the NADCO report. That is if SG of Jubilee takes his seat. Please clap for Honorable Kioni. The Honorable Musyoka spoke about the spirit of solidarity in the coalition. We hope you also seized with the matter that those of us from near here, around the mountain, have a big thing on Friday. And yeah, we hope you are, isn't it? Yeah? I think the Honorable Kioni will have 2 minutes to explain, but the mountain will speak on Friday about where we are going and why we are going there. And so we hope that all of you in the coalition stand with us in encouragement, in words, in deed, in haya. Hiyo ingine leader ongeza hapo. And I was quite happy to hear Honorable Kalonzo speak to the spirit of revolution, that look, if the political class keeps on betraying the citizen, you can well understand if the citizen exercises her constitutional right, to move things forward. Finance bill. Honorable members, I really hope no one on our side of the coalition, there was one of your colleagues who was caught off guard on national television saying that the Finance Act of last year brought food prices down. I mean, it is the most ludicrous kind of comment you can make. All taxes bring the cost of everything up. It's a very simple thing. So, the honorable members, of course it starts with the budget policy statement. We discussed, honorable members, earlier in the year. It came to you. You may not see the numbers from the back. The point is, the budget policy statement that came through the House, was seeking to increase taxes by 324 billion. 324 billion in ordinary revenue and 41 billion coming from the fees that we pay that you call A in A. So the real question, honorable members, before you, as you go through the finance bill, is which of the measures that you'll be approved. And this is part of the structural problem that we hope you could improve in the way the finance bill is presented to you. It is presented, of course, in the normal way, 5 segments, one for income tax, for VAT, for excise duty, miscellaneous, and so on, as well as tax administration. Each of the measures specified in there, the difficulty with it doesn't tell you as honorable members what really is the expectation from that particular measure that you are asked to approve. So you're, in a sense, approving a blanket idea and what should happen in our view. And the country director of CAS said we are the government in waiting. Well, when we are no longer waiting, then the finance bill will certainly be presented in a different manner. But honorable members, as you go through it, ask yourselves, which of the measures that you're being asked to approve, how much tax is coming from each of those measures? What's the impact of that measure on the citizens? Because I have 10 minutes, I won't go through the slides as they are laid out, but they'll be available to honorable members. And I should also add, this is a very preliminary analysis. And the Economic Council will be deepening the analysis and sending the report to you. Let me start with income tax. A number of difficult propositions brought up for you to approve. One is to see trade associations as though they are companies. So Kenya National Chamber of Commerce or KEPSA, to see trade associations as companies and therefore make them subject to income tax. You are also being asked to amend or delete Section 54 of the housing, the recent one for the housing levy. The impact of that deletion is that when the saver withdraws the money, then that money is subject to tax. You will also be asked to, you are being asked to approve a new tax for motor vehicles of between 5,000 and 100,000 per motor vehicle to be collected by the insurance companies when they insure your car. Now, the difficulty with this, of course, two difficulties. One, on third-party insurance, then what is the valuation that will be used? But most importantly, of course, that tax is going to percolate through the transportation sector, and transport costs are going to go up in general. You will also find you are being asked to change certain definitions. Section 2 of the bill is asking you to change definitions in Section 2 of the Income Tax Act to bring, as I said, trade associations to pay taxes, family trusts to pay taxes, and so on. And we urge you to say a big no. I want to move on to VAT. The big issue with VAT, again, is moving bread and flour and other food items basically to, you move them from zero rated to exempt. And the impact is that the inputs that go into making the flour, then the producers cannot claim back that VAT. And because they can't do that, obviously they push it to the citizen. Currently, we estimate unga might go up by about 10 to 15 bob. But I want to say here, it's a preliminary estimate. Obviously, you should be saying a very big no, because, we should be bringing the cost of living down, not what our colleagues in government are doing, which is to do everything to try and bring it up. In excise duties, you're being asked to change quite a number of things. Allow me to pick only one, which is to increase the excise duty on financial services. So, when people, and you remember last year, honorable members, this was moved from 12 to 15%. Now it is moving from 15% to 20%. That is the proposal. So when people use mobile money and all the financial services that are making financial inclusion better for Kenya, all those charges, the proposal is now for you or for the country to tax them at 20%, which we believe you should say a really big no. Allow me to stop there. The overall impact of what you're being asked to do is to increase the burden of tax, an average of 27,000 per person. When you think on it, the working population, so if you say the working age, and you say these 324 billion in new taxes or increased taxes and the 41 billion in additional fees, how much is that per person? Frankly, it is equivalent to 27,000 shillings for every working person. Now, obviously, children don't pay taxes, but if you are spreading it to everybody, including children, then it is nearly 6,000 for every person, man, woman, child. Surely it is not practical to do. We should say no, and I agree with Honorable Kalonzo that we must consider, going back to the streets if that is what is going to take to say no. I thank you very much indeed for listening. Thank you, Fred. Is it? Did I keep time? Thank you.
Thank you. That was short, and thank you so much. Thank you. Now, allow me to recognize the presence of Dr. Oburu Odinga. The youth leader is in the house. We want to move very fast because we are now moving into the NADCO bills. But I want to introduce or invite the technical team that was part of this at Bomas from Azimio side, who will now again invite Dr. Tiende Amolo. One of the bills that has been processed is the IBC Amendment Bill 2023. And Dr. Tiende Amolo will just take us through some of the areas of concern that they had and some of the amendments that have been there. Then Zain and Professor Adams will complete the process, so they'll take over from there. Zain and Prof. I think Prof, you come first.
Thank you very much to the leadership of Azimio and all Waheshimiwa, all protocols observed. I think that starting where Governor Nderitu has left is that one of the issues that was canvassed, that as Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka said was an irreducible minimum, was the cost of living. And we all know how that happened in the Bomas talks when the government stonewalled. And then when they were stonewalling, they were saying that it was by February that they would be able to reduce the taxes. February came, and now we are in May, and instead of reducing the taxes are going up. And that's why what Governor Nderitu is saying is so important. As I invite Dr. Tiende, let me just put it in context. That NADCO was a successor to the bipartisan talks, of which Azimio was led by Dr. Tiende, and I can see some members, Honorable Sifuna, the SG of ODM. I can see the deputy, is it the whip or deputy whip? Yeah, the deputy leader, Senator Wambua is here. I saw Honorable Amina Munyazi, who was both a member of the bipartisan and NADCO. And basically, NADCO learned a lot from what the bipartisan team had done. In fact, it became the template which NADCO members, led by Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and deputized by Honorable Ndai, took from. And just in context, Kenya Kwanza had their issues, and Azimio insisted on their issues. In fact, Azimio compelled Kenya Kwanza to include electoral justice. Initially, they simply wanted the reconstitution of the IBC panel as the only issue. But if you finally look at the bills that you'll be taken through, it covers a wide area on electoral justice issues. They didn't want to hear anything about the fidelity to multipartism. Among the bills that you will be taken through, the one on political party is there. They didn't want to hear anything on the audit of the elections. In fact, they have taken it to court. You'll see that some of the bills we are talking about has that. And lastly, as Honorable Mazayo has indicated, they didn't even want to implement what was finally agreed on. In fact, if you look at those bastardized bills that were brought to the Senate, they are just bringing back what your leadership in NADCO had removed. They were just bringing them back, which means that all along, they just wanted their own thing. With those few remarks, may I invite Dr. Tiende Amolo to help us go through one of the bills which has already been canvassed upon. Dr. Tiende.
Thank you, Prof. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. I'll be very brief. I am invited in my capacity as one of the members of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of the National Assembly, which sits as a joint committee with the Senate Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, and I think Honorable Senator Catherine Muma is with us there, and I think a few other members. Just to say first that I'm going to talk about very briefly the IEBC Amendment Bill, which is the first bill that has so far now gone through the National Assembly. It's before the Senate. And as we talk about it, there are three things that are standing out. One is what the speakers have already spoken about, especially Justice Stewart Mazayo, Senator, in terms of the attempts to change. One of the things that is consequential on the process in which we are, and Senator Wambua knows, and Senator Edwin Sifuna, is one of the reasons the first talks collapsed, was the path to take. In the interest of moving forward, it was chosen to take the path through Parliament. And it comes with the vagaries of Parliament. And those are the vagaries of Parliament. We have started seeing them. That will not be the last. They will keep coming. So we must be alive to that. The second one is, as a consequence, we then must suffer the tragedy of our stolen majority in Parliament. And that stolen majority has reduced us to a situation where our leaders are called leaders of minority when they should actually be leaders of majority. And with that, it then subjects us, even in the joint committee in which we are, to the leadership of Kenya Kwanza, both in chairing and the deputy chairs, unlike in the NADCO talks, where there was what we'd call equality of arms. And the third result of that is that therefore we are outgunned and outnumbered in that committee. We have to keep fighting for everything, including retention of a comma, including making sure that everything that came from the NADCO team is reflected in what we are discussing, instead of focusing on how to pass it. We are reduced, thirdly, to a situation where we are subjected to very interesting interpretations. Right now, I think in the National Assembly and even in the Senate, we were given 45 days. The first tragedy is the leadership then interprets those 45 days as 45 parliamentary days. The consequence is immense. Because in a week, Parliament sits on 3 days. If you interpret as 3 days instead of 7, in a month you only have 12 days. And if you exclude recess, you move basically from 45 days to almost 5 months. And that's where we are headed. The tragedy therefore is that, in my considered opinion, there is liturgy from our counterparts on the other side. There is minimal interest in moving the NADCO report and the bills forward. And those are things we'll have to deal with as we go along. The IEBC Amendment Bill, I think, is the easiest, because it is the only bill in which there appears to be a commonality of interest. And therefore, it is the one that they selected to start with. It was not even subjected to a discussion by the committee. But we were happy to get at least one bill out of the way. I want to tell you that the difficult path lies ahead. And it's going to be very difficult. And we will be coming back to that. In terms of the IEBC Amendment Bill, it is very simple. First of all, for the members of the National Assembly, it's not so much a point of discussion now because we discussed it and passed it. It's now before the Senate. I think it was sent to the Senate last week. So the Senate will be considering it. There's a matrix we developed, which I'll share with Senator Stewart Mazayo, just to understand. There's not much that was changed. We confirmed, and having gotten the draft bills from the technical committee, we went paragraph by paragraph, and we were happy to confirm that at least insofar as the IEBC Amendment Bill is concerned, there was no amendment. It came as it came from the NADCO team. But as is expected with the vagaries of Parliament, the team decided that we must go through public participation. So there were hearings, there were presentations, and some of them, as you know, are usually prearranged. You know. So anyway, but fortunately, there were no substantial amendments. There are only 5 areas which I would point out, and they are not fundamental. They were just to align the bill. The first area is in respect of the term of the secretary, which so far as we speak has been 5 years renewable once, the chief executive and secretary of the IBC. The NADCO team proposed that it be 3 years renewable once. After hearing public participation, it was decided that it should be 4 years renewable once. That's the only slight amendment. It is not really consequential, but it was thought it is necessary in terms of experience, and the report covers that. The second area is in terms of review of a general election, what you'd call an audit. And the bill requires that what we were now demanding as standalone should be routine. The IBC should do a review of the general election within 1 year of any election. After some discussions, it was thought 1 year might be too constrained, especially for a proper audit, so it was extended to 18 months. It's not really consequential. The third area is in respect of the panel, the selection panel, which was now expanded from 7 to 9. And it was permitted that the existing members of the selection panel are eligible to be considered in the new panel. But what then the committee realized is that there was no mechanism for enabling the new selection panel to commence its work. So that was included in terms of just proper commencement. Additionally, it was realized that there was no clear mechanism for financing the selection panel. And although there were some proposals to make the presidency finance, in some it was the Public Service Commission, but it was determined that because essentially the panel is fundamentally appointed through the parliamentary parties, therefore it's the Parliamentary Service Commission that should provide the budget. And so that was included. That is in strengthening the provisions, it's not altering. Number 4, the transitional clause. There was a transitional clause to dissolve the current selection panel. I think I spoke to that, but not to now activate the new panel. I'd already I spoke to that, especially in terms of the future panels, not just the current. So that was tidied up a bit. And then secondly, it was to provide timelines, because there was no clear timelines for by when should the selection panel provide the names to the president, within what time should the president appoint. So it was determined that we say that the selection panel will forward the names to the president within 14 days, because we are all constrained for time on IBC, and that the president should only have a maximum of 7 days, because there's nothing the president is doing with those names, especially as had been captured by senior counsel and our principal, Kalonzo Musyoka, that it's a negotiation, prior negotiation. So there's no reason that it should stay for that long. The last and the fifth is about the definition of parliamentary parties. It was noted that the selection panel, the parliamentary parties would participate, but there was no definition in the act. So an provision was inserted to define the parliamentary parties, and all that was done was to lift what in the National Assembly Standing Order 20A that defines parliamentary parties. In the National Assembly, it's defined as a minimum of 5 members. Yeah, 5%, yes, not 5 members, 5%. And that's what was lifted. Now, in the Senate, it is different. But fortunately, that definition that was lifted was limited to the National Assembly. It does not say Parliament. It says the National Assembly. So I think this is one area where the Senate might be well guided to make sure there is no amendment to say Parliament. Let our problems in the National Assembly stay with us in the National Assembly, and then we are still okay with that. That really is the essence of the amendment. Thank you very much. Prof.
Thank you very much, Honorable Tiende Amolo. In fact, one of the issues that he talked about that was initially discussed at the initial stages of NADCO was what kind of secretariat was NADCO supposed to have. Azimio was of the view that it should be extra parliamentary, and at worst, it should be a mix of extra parliamentary and parliamentary. Kenya Kwanza insisted that it was parliamentary staff that should be used, and they knew why they were insisting on that. In fact, the principals here will tell you that it forced us, because we were now working with parliamentary staff, and it's good that Honorable Kioni has arrived. I don't know why Fred Okango did not introduce him that he has arrived. He's a principal and he's the man on Friday, it's his day. He kept on telling us that I know them. I've worked with them. They'll keep on changing things. And that's what finally happened. In fact, they did it in spite of the fact that I and Dr. Mthomi Thiankolu did countersign the bills to ensure that that's what is finally published. But they didn't care. They still went and changed. So I totally agree with Dr. Otiende Amolo that going forward, there's still going to be a lot of challenges, and especially on bills that there is no unanimity. All along they wanted the reconstitution of the panel because IEBC can't wait. But after that, there'll be a lot of clawing back, and members of parliament must be on the lookout. Let me now call Honorable Abubakar Zain, who was also part of the technical team, to take you through the other bills. Honorable Zain.
Thank you, Prof.
I've been guided that
Respected leaders of Azimio party and affiliate parties, honorable members, and our colleagues from Conrad Adenu, my task has been made a bit easy, and I will take the cue of those who spoke before me. So I will first talk about a little bit about context, and then go to give highlights on the election bills. And then I will request my brother, Professor Adam Zolo, to speak to the other bills. And then to crown it all, it will be our leader, Honorable Kioni, to give the final word. But let me start with Honorable Otiende Amolo's presentation. I also, like Professor Adam Zolo, agree with his presentation, but also to add further caution. Daktari, between the time you signed the report and the time it is tabled, you have to go through line by line, because I already saw something else in relation to the term of the secretary. The copy that I have, which is signed and stamped, has a variation. So let me start with context. I think the technical team shared with you a Luya saying. I can't say it in Luya, but I can say it in English as a translation of the saying. The saying goes something like this: the pot broke at the doorstep. Yeah? That somebody went to get water, to fetch water, traveled a great distance to and from the river, and by the time they reached the doorstep at home, it fell down and broke. So we keep that in mind all the time, that it is possible, as we have been warned, that the pot can break at the door. Secondly, is to say that we must always see this process as a continuum. The negotiations in the streets led for a path to negotiations in the boardrooms. This was captured in the NADCO report. And then we go to Parliament now. Our history shows, all the time, our history shows, from pre-independence time, every time you make one step forward, they take you one step back. But also, when you see people want to claw back, there are three things that you should bear in mind. The first one is that they already lost the plot at the point of negotiation. So when they lost the plot and realized that people have made gains, now they want to claw back. The second thing you should realize, the attempts to claw back will not end, as Dr. Otiende Amolo said, by these matters being taken to you, honorable members in Parliament. They will continue. So I will talk a little bit about that in a moment. But the third one, and you leaders know this, it was not our choice for a reform path. Our choice was a revolutionary path. Right? Because we said the Constitution is not being implemented with fidelity, and we said that people are operating outside the Constitution and they are oppressing the people of Kenya. And that's the reason why we went to the streets. And every time you go on a revolutionary path, they want to take you back to a reform path. But even in taking you back to the reform path, they don't want to adhere to it. So, something you should bear in mind. This is important. There is a seminal book that was written by someone. He talked about from political want to political will. But we as Azimio, I said, no. We must go further than that. So you say from political want to political will, and from political will to political do. Political do. That is the ultimate test. So, what should we prepare ourselves for? We should prepare ourselves that our first place of resistance, the first place of resistance is the honorable offices of our minority leaders in both chambers. And that's why we pushed back, and Honorable Senator Mazayo said, we recognize that they were bringing in fake bills. You know, people are used to fake things. So they brought fake bills. And at our first resistance point of our leadership in Parliament, they saw that and they stopped it. The second level of resistance must be the departmental committee where the bill is being taken. And those who look at these bills will have an extra responsibility to ensure that what is signed by our minority leaders as the kosher documents is the one that is be discussed, but you must do the second thing, which is you must compare notes in the report with the instrument. Why is that important? Because it is the report that gives you the reasons why we seek to amend these bills. It is absolutely critical to do that. Then there is a third point of resistance. This bill, as usual in democratic and parliamentary practice, will come from the committee and come to the plenary. That's another place we have to exercise two cautions. The first one, as I said to Dr. Otiende Amolo, first you must make sure what came from the committee is the same as what is being tabled on the House. That we must make sure. Secondly, we must also guard that parliamentary practice allow for moving of amendments from the floor of the House. Again, we must be very careful. And our whips and our leaders must take keen attention. And any proposed amendment to claw back is then dealt with at that point. Some people will say we are negotiating from a position of weakness because they have bought some of those who are elected on our coalition, bought and paid for. But this doesn't mean that we shall accept anything that they pass using majoritarian numbers and say, as many of those of the similar opinion say aye, and then everybody say aye, and you shout you down, and then you say you are in a minority. We should be carrying whistles, and the whistles say we accepted to come on the reform path as a concession, and no one can stop us from going back to the revolutionary path. And I can say this without any fear of contradiction, which is, in fact, the revolutionary path, the situation has ripened even more in the country. Council already took us in the summary. The first one, there was reason why we were limiting the term of the secretary. We said, no more, ever again will a secretary oversee 2 elections. No more. You oversee 1 election, you go home. That you learn how to rig and you are allowed to run 2 elections? No. Secondly, we changed the numbers of the panel that will advertise and recruit the commissioners so that we can have a say. We can have a say, expanding it so that we can have a say. Last time they did it on their own. We refused to participate. They went on and gazetted the panel anyway. We are saying no more. And then now let me go to why did we come up with strengthening the election offences bill, the amendments. Why? Lo and behold, there were very few offenses that were contemplated that they can be done as part of rigging of elections. So we have extended offenses, particularly concerning the officials of IEBC. And not only extended the offenses and make them holistic, we have made them painful, extremely painful. But we have also linked the offenses to how credible an election is or would be. So offenses can be a ground for nullification of a rigged election. And this has been done in many ways, including that you must gazette the polling stations. And anybody trying to establish a polling station, a fake polling station outside those which are gazetted and ascertained before an election, it constitutes a criminal offense. Right? Interfering with transmission of results is a criminal offense. Trying to change the outcome of a result in a polling station is a criminal offense. Uttering false returns is a criminal offense. All these things were not criminalized. So when you come and have a chance to go through the bill, you will see a raft of many offenses. And it is shocking. It is shocking that we could be operating elections without these offenses. Let me give you last example under this score. Procurement of any aspects of the managing of elections can now be open to only reputable organizations. Any organization that has question marks, either in Kenya or abroad, cannot tender for election materials and services. So, no more will a company that has done ill things in Latin America, in Europe, in other parts of Africa, can participate in elections in Kenya. We have also outlawed this idea that somebody can have proprietary rights that cannot be accessed by Kenyans. So now let me go to quickly to the Elections Amendment Bill. The Elections Amendment Bill must be read together with the IBC Bill and the Offences Bill to have a holistic approach to elections. We have strengthened election accountability and integrity by saying the results at the polling station is not only final, it can be published by anybody once it has been declared. They used to threaten media that if you publish results, that is some form of an offense. There is no such offense. Secondly, the transmission of the results from the polling station to the constituency and to the National Tallying Center will be done simultaneously. In the case of presidential elections, together you will transmit the results to IEBC officials, but also to presidential candidates or their agents. Simultaneously. So, by midnight of an election night, we will know who is the winner. We don't have to wait for those days and then come to some place called Bomas and the cooking is going on there, as one of the late chairmen said. Transmitted from the polling station to the constituency, to the county, to the polling, to the national, simultaneously together with the presidential candidates or their agents, or both. And you cannot transmit wrong results. Right? In the elections, we have also identified the various components where rigging takes place. There are only two ways of rigging elections, by the way. Stealing blatantly, the kind which the late Mwai Kibaki said, you also need some intelligence to read. Yeah, blatantly, without caring. Or you can steal, as our brothers and sisters in Nigeria say, stealing small, small. Right? You steal small here, 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 here. So the election bill looks at the whole electoral cycle. And let me explain where we are now. One of the first steps in managing or mismanaging of elections, manipulating or declaring credible results, is constitutional, legal, policy frameworks. So these bills are designed to do that. Let me now say only three things and then sit down, because somebody will write a note to me soon. So the first thing is this. What is the fundamental responsibility of our humble members? and let us echo, the technical team echoes the credit that was said to you, that you are the vanguard of protecting Kenyan interests. So, we must have always quorum. And we must have people who have been prepared. Don't go to any meeting unprepared. People who are prepared to prosecute what is in these bills, in those committees, and in the House. Secondly, let us be loud. You know, last week, the other side was being given credit for the PBO Act. Right? And our leaders will tell you they resisted. They refused. And it is our leaders who forced them. And that is the secret behind the final bill that I will mention, which is very short. The instrument bill. The one which makes it illegal not to operationalize a bill when a debt has been given. The one that makes it illegal for the government printer to refuse to print a report. The one that has said, if there is a matter that has been done within a certain time frame in the election management, if you violate that, you can be jailed. Okay? So second last thing. Like Dr. Otiende Amolo, they are not going to stop trying monkey business. It is not done until it is done. And when it is done, in Parliament, we'll move to implementation. We'll move to the creation of IBC. We'll move to keenly following what is going on in IBC. Safari hii, tuko na wao sambamba. Sambamba. The last one, and I say this humbly, with a lot of respect, our leaders who you represent the hope of Kenyans. Because those who are in power, the regime in power, has left that noble responsibility to us. Ikiwa inatakikana tuanze tena, firimbi ipigwe. Firimbi ipigwe. Asanteni sana for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ndugu Zain. I'll just speak about the political parties bill and the state offices bill, and then we bring it to closure. Basically, the way dictatorships work, where you have a constitutional provision for multi-party democracy such as ours, is that you first kill the parties and then you control parliament. And that's what exactly is happening. And therefore, your delegates decided that the mischief that is in the Political Parties Act had to be cured both in the Constitution and also in the Act itself. You people will remember, you honorables will remember, that in order to contain those who were defecting from KANU in 1966, a defection law was created. That when KANU crossed the floor in 1964 and joined KANU, there was no by-election because there was no law stopping you from crossing the floor. But when it came to members crossing to KPU, a law was brought that if you resign from the party that sponsored you at the last general election, then you must go and seek a new mandate. Then the question was asked then that, why did you bring it when Kadu was being brought? But in hindsight, it was meant for sanitizing the political process. But the regime then even applied it retrospectively. Because on the first day, both in the Senate and the House of Representatives, 29 members had crossed. And they had crossed under the existing law. So a new law was rushed in Parliament to say that the law would apply retrospectively. Absurd as it was, Parliament was interpreting the same law that it had created. Now, after that, you'll remember that as soon as we went to multipartyism, whenever you showed allegiance to a different political party, you had to resign. Whether you are Tom Obondo, whether you are Pili Wawire, whether you are Japheth Chamala, you had to go back to the electorate. Then the Political Parties Act came. And they brought this term called deeming. Deeming. And lawyers will tell you that deeming is a moving target. It's not constant. So one of the issues that your members wanted cured, so that those who have used the party ticket don't come and say that you can't deem me that I've been defected. So they replaced deemed with deregistration. So that the party, which is a club, which has a constitution, which has rules, which has regulations, which has code of conduct, that you sign up to when you join, if you violate that party's constitution, rules, regulations, and that party deregisters you, and you go through the court process that has to be finished within 90 days, and it is so, then it won't be that again, bado niko hapo. So it was curing this, and I can tell you there's going to be a fight back, because that's one of the clauses which they tried to fight, but your delegates stood firm and said that must be included. So you must watch out for that. It's now both in 103 and in the Political Parties Act. The other issue that was determined there was that a one-person institution, where you have one individual, the registrar of political parties, they have assistants, but it's a one-person institution, had to be cured, because we are all human beings. We are all human beings. When this government is in power, unasikia huyo. When another one comes, unamsikia. So Kioni might wonder, oh, what has happened to this registrar? It's just, nothing has happened. It's simply that a new boss has come that they can give orders. And therefore, what your delegates decided was that we amend that Political Parties Act, so that instead of having the Office of Registrar of Political Parties, you now have a Political Party Regulatory Commission consisting of 5 members, 2 members nominated by the majority party or coalition, 2 members nominated by the minority party and coalition, and 1 member nominated by the Parliamentary Service Commission to represent non-parliamentary parties. And those five, once they are appointed, will sit down and nominate or elect who becomes the chair and who becomes the deputy, and the chair and deputy will be of different genders. Will be, network, will be of different genders. Shall be. So the rest are there. Then let me come to where we disagreed with them, where your delegates disagreed with them, but also a middle ground had to be reached on the creation of state offices. And their interest was in constitutionalizing the Prime Minister's office. And in order to get a buy-in, they also proposed the leader of official position. The position that you, through your leaders, had agreed on was that such an amendment would change the governance architecture under the current constitutional framework, and that those amendments would require a referendum. Kenya Kwanza was of the view that those amendments can be done through the parliamentary initiative as long as those officers are not members of parliament. In other words, they become ex officio. So as a way of agreeing to disagree, if you read the NADCO report, Azimio said that yes, there's need for a rejigging of the governance structure, but it will require a referendum. Kenya Kwanza said, yes, there's a need, it doesn't require a referendum. So to that extent, bills were brought on the prime cabinet. They're now calling it the prime minister, not prime cabinet secretary. The prime minister and the leader of official opposition. And they are not going to be members of parliament. Your delegates decided that, okay, we don't know what will happen to it. We are sure Kenyans will go to court over it. But should it pass without any constitutional challenges, or even courts approve it, then your delegates said that since they are playing politics with the prime cabinet secretary's post, we also must play politics with the leader of official opposition. They just wanted one office, but your delegates insisted that that office of the leader of official opposition must have 2 deputies. So the leader of official opposition bill has the leader of official opposition and has 2 deputies who shall be state funded, because they shall be a kind of shadowing the government and therefore have to be funded from the government. So when you see it, it's not that Azimio delegates abandoned what had been agreed on. It was simply that Azimio said it goes to a referendum, they said it goes through parliament, and therefore you couldn't stop them from pushing what they wanted, and that is what is in place now. So I think, let me stop there, but call Ndegwa Njiru, and then from then we will open it up for discussion. Honorable Kioni will come at the tail end once the questions have been asked.
Thank you, Your Excellencies, members of the Parliament. I am most humbled for this opportunity. Just to mention that I am aware that there is serious issues arising. I was asked by His Excellency just to inform the members on the position of the leader of majority, which to us belongs to us. That case is still pending in court, and you might want to ask yourself how that case will have or will impact on the proposed amendments. First of all, we are saying before the High Court that if you are leader of Azimio, or you're a member elected through Azimio, and for example, members of parliament, and the returns of Form 35 was that you are an Azimio, our position is that you cannot mutate to any other party. So if then you cannot mutate to any other party, then we might then want to ask ourselves, what will happen to the question of the proposed amendment of the demeaning, the one that Professor was speaking about? You are deemed to have left the political party. Number two, just one reaction, is that the question of the Election Offences Act. If then we are saying that we are proposing election offences, there is a question of hosting or who hosts the presidential election server. Because if the server is then to be hosted outside the jurisdiction, how will that law then be applicable? The question of jurisdiction. Number two, on the question of the elections, again, you've realized that most of the election evidence that is needed during election petitions is always in the custody of the IBC. So the question is, if we are amending the Election Offences Act, and you remember that offences is a preserve of the National Police Service, and then we do not propose that during the time of elections, every polling station be a gazetted police station for purposes of collection of that evidence. Otherwise, then our proposal may not have a proper sitting. Because who will collect that evidence? Where will the OB be? Number two, on the question of election evidence, you realize that one of the most fundamental documents during election petitions is the polls days diary. The polls days diary is always in the control of the IBC. They locks it in the ballot box, and then the officer says, I need a court order for me to open this ballot box. So, and then you realize, if you go to the presidential elections, we have a very strict timelines. To the extent that you'll not get orders to open that particular ballot box for you to access that evidence. My proposal is that during the time of elections, every political party be allowed to maintain a corresponding polls days diary. So that your polls days diary corresponds with the elections days diary. And number two, that the elections days diary should not then be locked in that particular ballot box, because you may need it in the next day for purposes of bringing evidence. I have spoken about the question of the hosting of the server. Who is going to host that server? Whose property is it? And when I speak about property, it's not the question of it's the legal property. Is it the legal, does the legal property belongs to the service provider, or is it our legal property? Number two, and perhaps the final one, the question of the declaration of the election results. What is the quorum? The other time, we had a quorum of 3 people saying, you have been elected. We had other people in Serena saying, you have not been elected. What is the quorum? How do we determine as to who has the quorum of determining and announcing the presidential elections results? Finally, the last one, the leader of opposition vis-a-vis the proposed, the existing structure. The existing structure is that of minority and the majority. We are saying the leader of opposition will represent the interest of the opposition party. Yet the Constitution has not appreciated the place of leader of opposition. How shall we anchor it without an amendment to the Constitution affecting substantive provisions on how Parliament is being composed? Noting that we either only have majority or the minority. The last one is about the question of the fusion. The fusions of those functions. The Constitution has fused the functions of both the majority and the minority. And we are told both the majority and the minority functions is to represent, legislate, and to oversight. So there is that clear fusion in the Constitution. Then the question is, if today Honorable Sabina Chege says, I am now affiliated to Azimio, to Kenya Kwanza, will that be deemed as a defection when the function is fused? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wakili. One of the things that has been addressed that he has raised, I believe it is in the IEBC bill, Zain, is that your delegates proposed an amendment to 13810, which now reads that the commission makes the decision and the chair announces the commission's decision. So the chair cannot just wake up that whoever wants to come with me, the way we are being to come with me. No, the commission has to make a decision and the chair just communicates. There's one thing that Dr. Tiende said that I believe that Your Excellencies, Honorable Kalonzo, Governor Oparanya, and the House leadership will communicate. When he said that in the bill on selection, they have aligned. And remember, NADCO was supposed to be as is, but it has been agreed that you can align. I think you will need to speak to that, because the moment you have opened that window, using the majority, they can totally. Exactly. So I think that needs to be made very clear. The way Otiende explained it, that align what constitutes alignment and what constitutes a change. So I hope the leadership will talk about that. Now we'll have questions. I think let's separate the finance bill from NADCO so that we start with the finance bill so that Honorable Nderitu.
There are no questions.
Oh, okay.
There are no questions on finance. There are no questions.
Okay. I'm guided that I just open it up for very few minutes, and whoever has a question, who has the moving mic? Give Senator Wambua the mic. Or comment. It doesn't have to be a question. Then it will be on Pareno after Honorable Wambua.
Thank you. Just two comments.
Then Deputy Minority.
On the political parties amendment bill, the creation of the political parties regulatory commission, to me, it's a master stroke. The requirement that the gender requirement is good, but I wish this bill went a step further to require that the chair and the vice chair of this commission cannot come from the same party or coalition of parties. That is an area that really it needs to be aligned.
If that qualifies for alignment.
I need to align that. And then on the definition of parliamentary parties, I want to be guided by our principles. Mheshimiwa Wandai, you remember we had this conversation. There's no minimum requirement definition in the National Assembly of 5%, yeah, for a party to qualify to be a parliamentary party. But that is specific to the National Assembly. It is open-ended in the Senate. There is no clear definition of what then a parliamentary party is in the Senate. Now, using that window, senators elected on a Jubilee ticket and who have since moved to Kenya Kwanza have now brought an amendment, or is it an alignment, with the standing orders of the Senate to require that a parliamentary party be defined as a party with at least 5 members. Yeah? Is that an alignment? Or I don't know, is that an amendment. We need, I'm asking, why was it difficult to carry that definition from the National Assembly to the Senate as well, so that it is one law applicable to both houses of Parliament. I thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentations. My concern is on the day of election. And I wanted to see, or maybe it's there but I've not seen, or you've not discussed because of time frame, what we are doing about the selection of returning officers and POs. In Kajiado, where I come from, we saw importation of people from outside Kajiado to come and supervise elections in Kajiado when we have able men and women who could have supervised that election, but it was meant for a purpose. They did it for a purpose. So what do we do to tighten up? Because this, they plan to, what they plan, they start with recruitment of POs and ROs and until the clerks. Can we tighten up and see how in our laws we can make IEBC accountable to the people they appoint on the day to run the election on the day of election? Then another aspect is on the assisted voters. In the last election, the assisted voters, the assisted are the illiterate, where we come from. We have a lot of illiterates. And when they come, illiterate people, when they come, they are assisted by the PO, and by that time the agents are not in place because they have not been admitted because they don't have badges. Again, another aspect that we need to look at. So that we have our agents, they must be accountable enough to have our agents admitted in time in polling stations. So that is one aspect. The issue of agents and protection of our agents, because they were chased away from polling stations. So who is this who looks at what is happening at the polling station? Then when the illiterates come, the person who is assisting them is a chosen person from somewhere else to come and ensure that they are just taking what they want to be ticked. So can we also check that they become, IBC becomes, and the law is tight enough to protect the illiterate person to vote for whoever they want to vote for, and to protect our agents to be in stations when they are supposed to be there, and to ensure that the PO or the clerk or the returning officer is not a person who has been earmarked for purposes of rigging. Thank you.
I hope Zain has taken those questions. He'll be able to respond. We go to Honorable Mbui.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Babu, is your hand up after that? Okay.
Yeah,
then Irene Mayaka. Then we'll go to Senator Kajwang. MP Mulyungi. Oh, okay. I've taken that round. I'll come to the next round, including Senator Faki and Senator Mutata. Okay, Honorable Mbui.
Yeah, thank you. First and foremost, I have a question because one of the problems we have with the elections is rigging. And the rigging sometimes starts even before the election itself. So maybe how do we handle the issue of registration of voters? Because at the point of registration of voters, you notice that sometimes the regime in power could decide to register easily certain areas more than others. Because, you know, geographically Kenya votes in a certain pattern. So how do we handle that so that we make sure that, you know, it is fair distribution of registration? Last time, you remember, where there were those gadgets that were being given out for registration, and you'd find in a whole county there's one or two gadgets. In another place, almost every ward has several gadgets. So that's one thing you need to look at. But I wanted to just make a comment on the issue of these bills coming to the House, and you can tell that members of the other regime, of the other coalition, are dismissive towards these bills. In fact, I remember the minority leader, when House Business, he raised it with the speaker, because apparently the majority leader had said there is no emergency with those bills, put them aside. I think the chair of JLAC also had kind of dismissed them. And I have a suggestion, because why is it we are seeming to be weak as a coalition, yet when the last election the results were announced, at that point we were the majority. Now, this is what has been happening. Members of this coalition have despaired. And they have despaired because those goodies that we were able to share amongst ourselves have been taken by some of our members, and when they defected, they've still maintained them. There are people holding very critical positions and very good committees that belong to Azimio, and they have gone to Kenya Kwanza. Now, I want to propose that before we open the house, because we are on recess now, we make sure that it's not business as usual. We refuse to allow any business on the floor until our positions are given back to us. There are people, there are members who are seated here today that are in one committee. And there are people who are with us who defected, who are sitting in 2-3 departmental committees. So I think this is one of the things, and I'm raising that because we are here as a PG, and there's no other better place to raise this matter. So I want to propose, Honorable Pio, we make this the new frontier for war. We open the house, we say no business, we sit where the mess is supposed to be put, and there will be no business until we get our slots back.
Very valid concerns, but I'm guided that members will find a forum to do that in-house, so that for today we just focus on the bills. But what you have raised, Honorable Mbui, is so critical because KPU had only 7 members, Ford Kenya had only 31 members, and they were able to whip themselves and keep the government in control. But hiyo mtafanya kiundani. Yeah. Honorable Babu.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you. I have 2 comments to make, one on the NADCO report and the other one on the finance bill. To start with the NADCO report, you did propose that we go the parliamentary initiative way in the introduction of certain offices, to be specific, Office of the Opposition and also Office of the Cabinet Secretary. So my question is, the moment the opposition is strengthened, and we know what happens in Parliament, especially after elections, the moment these offices are strengthened and they are being financed by the government, especially the Office of the Opposition, then what happens in such a situation where the Parliament will want to come and bring an amendment to the same? Won't we be interfering so much with this office and watering down its powers? And it might end up being even scrapped off again. So I think we need to look into that, and my opinion is to go the referendum way. When it comes to the finance bill, Professor, you know very well that Kenyans are suffering because of the high cost of living. And every year, with the increment of the taxes, leads to serious increment of expenditures without an increment in income in the pockets of common wananchi. Right now, the Kenya Kwanza government is introducing a tax on bread. We know what led because of taxation of bread. We know the French Revolution, if I may remind you. And during the French Revolution, it was caused mainly because of economic inequality and social injustice. When common wananchi were demonstrating to demand that the cost of bread be lowered in France during the reign of King Louis XVI. The revolution started in 1789 when the people said that you must lower the cost of bread. But the wife to the king, Marie Antoinette, came out boldly and said that if you guys can't afford bread, why don't you eat cake? That is what Ruto is trying to tell us now. That if we can't afford bread, we need to eat cake. And I urge Kenyans, His Excellency Kalonzo said it rightfully. This nation can only be changed if there are demonstrations, no negotiations. We need to swing and stop singing. Thank you.
I think that one needs no answer. That was a comment. Honorable Mayaka.
Thank you very much. I just want to make 3 very quick comments. Number 1 is, I know we've glazed through the bills, but it is my hope that we'll actually get the drafts so that we can familiarize ourselves very well with it. Second one is we need to be very cautious, especially during the Committee of the Whole House, because I noticed during the IBC Committee of the Whole House, we had members who tried to sneak in some mischief. So that is where we really need to focus on, so that they don't sneak in the mischiefs that they want to focus for us. And finally, on the finance bill, I know there's a lot of focus on Mkate, And that is exactly what they want us to do, so that they hide all the other things in the actual bill. The devil is actually in the detail. And Honorable Wandai did share with us a document from Bowman's that I think we all need to familiarize ourselves with, because that is where they've really hidden the things that are going to affect Kenyans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mayaka. Honorable Mayaka is basically saying, suppose watoe mkate. Will you be okay with that finance bill? So you need to look at that. Honorable Kajwang?
Thank you, Professor. The NADCO report made mention of issues of boundaries. And Your Excellency, the Vice President, I'd like to report that the Senate has already processed the county boundaries bill. I was a sponsor of the bill, and the bill has now been transmitted to the National Assembly. And I'd like to request Honorable Wandai that when the bill comes before the National Assembly, it be given priority. This bill has flopped about 5 times from the 11th, 12th, and now the 13th Parliament. And I also request if you could appoint a co-sponsor, because we changed the standing orders. If there's a co-sponsor, a bill moves faster than just it being a Senate bill. And so I'll be consulting with you if you can get a co-sponsor for it. Because there's a mistaken view that this bill seeks to redefine the boundaries of counties. The boundaries of counties, unfortunately, in the current constitution, were not defined, but then the District and Provinces Act, which is drawn from the Independence Constitution. So the bill has not altered a single inch of a county boundary, and the bill also has not made those provisions that led to its rejection in the past. Because I think in the past the National Assembly argued it was a money bill, but I believe that this being one of the things the NADCO process prioritized, we can get a bipartisan and a bicameral approach to it. Secondly, there is also the entrenchment of funds in the Constitution. And I think this is a bright idea because it ensures that legislators at the national level and at the county level are ring-fenced from the interference of the executive, particularly the Ward Development Fund. This has also flopped, I think, twice or thrice in the 11th and 12th Parliament. We need to find a way of making sure that this succeeds. Finally, on statutory instruments, there is debate going on even in the UK right now, where we draw our parliamentary practices, that Parliament has become lazy. And in many cases, we write laws and leave power to cabinet secretaries to come up with regulations. And then we do not go ahead to check those regulations coming from the executive. I wish we could align the amendments to the Statutory Instruments Act by amending Clause 12 and putting it in statute that the delegated legislation committees of Parliament shall be chaired by persons who are not in parties that form government. Because right now it is absurd that in the Senate the person who chairs the delegated legislation committee is a member of government. They are incapable and they do not have the spine to stand up to the executive. And a lot of delegated legislation takes effect due to lack of consideration. Because after 21 days, the regulations take effect. And so, Honorable Wandai and Honorable Madzayo, this is a debate which we either take to an amendment of the standing orders, but I know it will be difficult, or we put it in statute so that that committee, alongside the Public Accounts Committee, Public Investments Committee, and implementation committees, they cannot be chaired by the executive. They need to be chaired by persons from this side. Thank you.
The leadership has heard you. They'll respond. Honorable Mulyungi.
Thank you. I will start with the animal in the house.
Like yours.
We from Azimio, we have been singing the song "Open the Server," and the server has not been opened. Have you sanitized who controls the server in your amendments? Number 2, on the matter raised by Senator Keo on IBC, where the chair and the vice chair cannot come from the same political party, I propose that the same applies to the political party's regulatory authority, so that the chair and the vice chair will not come from the same party or coalition. Finally, on the matter of defections, I wanted clarification on working with the other side, because I've seen a situation whereby even a nominated member of parliament from Azimio is working with the government. How do you deal with that kind of a situation? Thank you.
Same way of the registration. We go to Honorable Anthony Oluoch, then Senator Umtata, then Senator Faki, then Honorable Fatuma, then the whip, then Ososi.
Thank you. I just wanted to buttress the issue raised by Honorable Mulungi on the issue of the proprietary rights on the software, especially the issue of the contracts that are signed by IEBC and assignment of copyrights to people other than this country. I think we must ensure that the amendment does not in effect, because elections touch on the sovereignty of the Republic of Kenya and the people. When you assign such rights to the exclusion of IEBC and the people, then you are essentially saying that the sovereignty of this country by contract has been assigned to third parties. That issue needs to be addressed. On the issue of the creation of the political parties regulatory authority, I think we must give clarity on the link to which how this can address two things. One is the mischief of this question of dimming. This dimming thing must be so clear that when you move from a political party, you actually resign so that you don't have a situation where people can take you around in courts up to the Supreme Court and still enjoy the benefits of the parties that sponsored them. But that is not the only thing that has weakened political parties. There is the second issue, which is the question of the political parties fund. I would have been happier if at the same breath that we were taking the CDF funds to the Constitution, these political parties funds should have been graduated in the Constitution itself. We are currently going through the budget process, and I think one of the presentations that we should have had today is an analysis of the estimates. What have they put in these estimates for political parties? Because this is how you erode the strength of political parties. And lastly, how do we deal with the historical accumulated arrears that the Court of Appeal gave? Unless we can address this thing, we are only addressing half of the problem that relates to the strengthening of political parties. Thank you.
Very much. I think Zain will answer the one related to elections, and I might give the ED of ODM to talk a little bit. I saw his write-up on the Standard. I think he has the Senate. But
why can't we conduct our elections in Dhiwa? And the media can even... Do we have bombers to conduct the presidential election? Secondly, when you say that we have a commission will be a majoritarian institution, the commission will declare on the basis of majority. Who tells you the majority cannot rig? Last time we had 3, on the side of rigging and we had 4 on the side of the upholding the results. We could still have a flip, upholding the results. How do you cure that? So for me, the presidential thing, if we can terminate the presidential election in the constituency, terminate a lot of problems, these things of transmission of whatever will not be there. Let the returning officer conclude the presidential election in his constituency and declare the results. Then the other person. Then bombers, I don't even know if we'll need bombers. So I'm really saying that we try to look at that architecture to see how it will work for us. We are also looking at the question of public finance. When I look at, already the estimates are in Parliament, you'll again get a situation whereby you're going to get, first of all, the Finance Act is basically a mechanism for raising funds approved by Parliament. But when you look at what happens in Parliament, the National Assembly, we always get an approval of expenditure. Parliament is never given a chance and the public to approve revenues. So when we come up with a Finance Act to collect the revenues, who has approved those revenues? We need to begin insisting that the revenues and the expenditure come out in the Appropriation Act. And finally, we need to look at how public funds are controlled and utilized. And I'm looking at Chapter 12. If you look at Chapter 12, it's very clear that the Treasury is not part of the executive. But the Public Finance Management Act fused the two. So even find like for us who are in the county structure, the Treasury, the executive fulfills its needs before it considers the counties. We should have an independent Treasury that is away from the presidency so that the president cannot ignore the budget passed by Parliament as he goes around the country declaring goodies as if there was no budget controlling how public finances will be used. So I think we needed to look at that and see to it that if we just have fidelity to Chapter 7 on the elections and fidelity to Chapter 12, we shall resolve the problems bedeviling this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The public eye, Zain will demonstrate to you that we are with you on that election. Everything you have said about the polling, the constituency is already there, but he'll explain. Honorable Faki, then Honorable Sos.
Thank you, Professor. I want, first of all, I want to agree with Senator Kajwang on. I made a proposal to amend the standing orders of the Senate so that a member from the party not in government will be chairing that committee. But our Speaker overruled that proposal, despite the fact that the technical committee of the House had agreed with my proposal. Number two, I was looking at the issue of audit of the elections, where the proposal in the bill was to allow the chair of the IBC to audit, if I'm not mistaken, to audit, to present an audit report. Now you can imagine if Chebukati was to do the audit, what will he have said in that audit? So we need to relook at that proposal so that an independent office does that audit. They are supposed to file reports in Parliament, but I don't think any was filed for the last general election, because they used to file reports which were considered by the JLAC of both houses. But in this year, I haven't seen, or in the last election, I haven't seen that audit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, Honorable Zain will answer that. I think that's what even 138(4)H envisages. It's just that IBC doesn't do it. Honorable Sosi, then Honorable Fatuma Network.
Thank you, Prof. Maybe if you can allow me to comment on opening of servers, which someone asked, that we talked about opening of servers and servers have not been opened. I've gone through the amendments, but one low-lying fruit, which I think the coalition should think about, is that in the Election Act, it provides for a joint technology committee between IBC, the political parties, and I think we have a few government agencies. And that provision was amended along the way after 2017 election to give IBC the discretion to have the committee or not to have the committee. So when we went to 2022 election, IBC just did not initiate that committee. And that's why you could see that a lot of the technologies they brought, the political parties were not very conversant. But in 2017, there was that committee. And that is what gave us a great chance of even winning the case at the Supreme Court. So what I would suggest is that we need to propose an amendment so that we make it mandatory for IBC to have that IT technology joint committee. And that will help us deal with issues of servers, issues of procurement, issues of the nature of technology, issues of data, and all that. The other issue is the amendment to the Political Parties Act. Yes, I know from the amendments, the new authority is going to have representation from the other parties, which are outside government. But then the elephant in the house is not that. The elephant in the house is financial independence of the office of the registrar of political parties. If that is not there, then we'll still have challenges. Because even now, the registrar of political parties, despite the fact that the law provides that 0.03% of the national income must go to political parties, the executive decides to vary that all the time. And she cannot do anything. So I would propose that apart from having that new authority, we need to have an amendment so that we give the new authority financial independence so that they cannot be manipulated at the whims of the executive. The last point which I want to just comment on the speech by His Excellency Kalonzo on the aggressions by this regime. One aggression which I think we need to speak to, which senators who are here agree with me, is there is a deliberate scheme to kill devolution in this country. We see things happening, some of the functions which are devolved, clear schemes to take them back to the national government. And even and I want to thank our members who are in the National Assembly. They stood so firm on the issue of division of revenue. You know, as a result of the Finance Bill Act which they passed, counties are going to require an additional 34 billion shillings to finance the effects of the Finance Act which they passed. And now they are saying that they cannot increase money to the counties, they can only increase 6 billion shillings. I think what we need to do as a team, as a Azimio team, is that those who will sit on the mediation committee, they need to go there with one issue, that we want to retain the 415 billion shillings. They are telling us that, oh, if we go for 415, CDF will be reduced, Sijui Kera will be reduced. We are not talking about reducing Kera. We are simply saying, this is what you have as a national government, and this is what we should have as counties. So I want to urge this team that we stand firm against any attempt to kill devolution. And surprisingly, they have even taken over COG. And some of our governors ignorantly are in bed with this government. They come and tell them, look here, we want to help you finance this function, like CHPs. We'll give you 50% counterpart funding. And they agree. But slowly by slowly, these functions are going back to the executive. The issue of alcoholic drink registration, you heard yesterday Deputy President saying they want to take over. So I think we need to stand firm, and this is one of the things that we should be talking tough, apart from the cost of living issue.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sosi. I think, again, that will be answered. But on the political party fund, I think we have it in the report. It might be weak in the act. Maybe you look, that's one of the issues that needs alignment so that it's dealt with. Honorable Fatuma, Full Network, then Honorable Mwenje, then finally Dr. Buru. But please be brief, because I'm told time is running out, yet the leadership has to also give resolutions before we leave. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My concern goes to when we pass bills in the House, especially the National Assembly. In the National Assembly, I'm a witness on several occasions, a bill is read and passed within 1 second. And they have a habit that when they know it is a bill that Azimio coalition was against, the likes of Osoro and Ichungwa makes the noise that you cannot even listen to the bill that is being read. It is read and then they know the bill that is being read. And the moment one raises a point of order, they make sure they shout, and then the speaker passes the bill. Under 1 second, a bill is passed. What other alternative do we have other than beating them the way we normally do?
Well, that's one thing that mtaenda muongee ndani kwa ndani. Honorable Mwenje.
Thank you very much. Mine will be brief. About 2 weeks ago, we were with Your Excellency Kalonzo and the Right Honorable Raila in Embakasi South donating food. Coincidentally, on the same day, the President spoke about NADCO while celebrating the 20 years anniversary. I believe it should be a strategy from here that we corner him with these words during that meeting. We might have missed it because we were ourselves somewhere else. Where we can corner him because he asked the leader of majority, where are you with these NADCO bills? And he asked the speaker. And I would propose we have a priority list. Now that we are done with IEBC, I would propose we maybe make the Political Parties Act to be the next priority. This is because, especially for the Jubilee Party, which we are suffering most, if those amendments can go through, it can really assist those of us. I think also the SG, and who is here, and the SG Jubilee is going to comment, Jubilee made a mistake by getting themselves to be recognized as a parliamentary party. Because I believe they can now not appoint some of the members based on the formula, unless now the coalition is lenient. Because there's a provision that says that I think that the fifth person being appointed comes from a party not recognized as a parliamentary party. So that is a mistake that Jubilee did, that they haven't figured it out yet. One of the other things I'd want to add, I noticed Senator Wambua mentioned it, is that if you allow in the Senate the Jubilee to be a parliamentary party, you'll be stuck with the problem we have. Because now we had a select committee to remove Linturi, and we are divided 6-5, but they give Jubilee, because it's a parliamentary, opposition. So your actual numbers become 7-4. So I think you should resist that attempt to recognize as a parliamentary party, because it will work against our favor as a coalition. Finally, it's just to add on the issue that our leader Mbui spoke about. Leader, I believe that issue of committees, because in JLAC we are suffering. We have 2 members who are with us out of the 15. So if we are able to find a way on the floor and maybe through other legal means to change that, because if we don't have JLAC, if we don't have numbers, having 2 members out of 15 makes our work with NADCO very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now go to the youth leader, and then I'll come to Honorable Kioni after that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just want to first of all agree with my brother here, Honorable Wambua, on the issue of on the issue of chairmanship of the Commission for Political Parties. That one of gender, I quite agree. That we need to have a gender, the person chairing from different gender and the person who is deputizing from a different gender. But we need to add that the other person must come from a different party. They must come from political parties. Mr. Chairman, I also want to just give my frustration on this word deemed, which you have removed. You have removed the word deemed and replaced it with the deregistration. And replacement of deregistration simply means retaining the status quo. Because, Mr. Chairman, when you deregister, you remove him from the party. He is not going to be a member of political party, but he is going to remain as a member of parliament, because removal of a member of parliament has been changed. The one you quoted, which was once you cross the floor, once you cross from your party which sponsored you to elections, you move to another party or you support another party which did not sponsor you in the elections, then you lose your seat and you go for election. That is what we used to have. What we have now is that a member of parliament can either resign or be recalled. And that process of recalling is very complicated. So how do we amend the law so that when you register a member from a political party which sponsored him to parliament, then he loses his seat? Otherwise, the people, they will just continue the way it is until the next election. They will not feel anything. They will just continue to be members and support the ruling party the way they are doing. And I don't think they really will bother. It will not bother them because the situation will remain the same. So we should not be clapping for deregister. You deregister them, so what? They will just continue because they are already working with order. They are order anyway. And the other one is the other one I wanted to comment on is on the Electoral Commission. On the Electoral Commission, you are saying that there will be a chair. There will be a chair, but elected by the 7 members. Once you select a chair, and you say the decision will be made by the commission. But I have not heard you defining for me what commission means. What is the quorum? How many members will make that decision to say that the commission has made that decision? How many of them will make that decision so that you say the commission has made a decision? Of course, you have made them 7 so that, you don't have, and I don't know whether this chair has any extra vote to decide, or he is just a chair and he doesn't have you call it casting, the casting vote or something like that. So how the devil is in the detail. We want to know the detail of what this commission means, that decision of the commission. What is it? That is my question, Mr. Chairman. That's all. Thank you.
Very much. I think I'm looking at the detail, then I'll answer you at the right time, because you raise an important issue which I think we had addressed, but I'm just trying to confirm. Now, this is the way we shall proceed as we wind up. We are going to have Honorable Jeremiah Kioni immediately coming to give his remarks. No? Later. Okay. Then we go back to answering the questions and comments, and we will start with Honorable Andai. Then we will come to Honorable Zain. Then we will give Honorable Stuart Mazai to also stroke Sifuna before we come to the closing.
I also want to agree that there is very little keenness or interest on the other side for these bills to be fast-tracked. And therefore, it's incumbent upon us who are here, especially those who are especially those who sit in the respective House business committees, to see to it that these bills are prioritized. As we speak, the Constitutional Amendment Bill is yet to be published. And yet, you know, it has got timelines in the Constitution. You can't vary those timelines. And yet again, we know that two of the statute amendment bills, that is the Leader of Opposition Bill and the Coordination of National Government Amendment Bill, are dependent upon the passage of the Constitutional Amendment Bill. You must understand that you won't be able to touch on the Leader of Official Opposition Bill or the Coordination of National Government Amendment Bill, which is a bill dealing with the office of the Prime Minister, the proposed office of the Prime Minister. So let's understand that. Again, I want to plead with my colleague members that please let's take time and read these bills. We shall endeavor again to post them in our group, the WhatsApp groups, today. We did so earlier on, I think. Please download them and read them. The entrenchment of funds, there are only 3 funds that we are entrenching in the Constitution, for clarification, for clarity. The NGCDF Fund, the Affirmative Action Fund, and the Senate Oversight Fund. The World Development Fund is not being entrenched in the Constitution because we realized during NADCO proceedings that there's already a clause in the Constitution that provides for such funds at the counties. What we agreed is basically enact an ordinary legislation at the national level to deal with the management of those funds in the counties and in the wards. The IBC, I agree on the issue of the political parties amendment bill. The proposed commission, I agree with the members who have spoken before me. We shall have to align it, to realign it rather, so that either of the chair or vice comes from the two coalitions. They are on the IBC amendment bill again. What is envisaged is that once the bill becomes an act of parliament, the current panel will stand dissolved. We have, however, given them a window, the members of the current panel, to perhaps reapply under the new law once it's enacted. And therefore, there's no issue of continuity. Whoever is in that panel and wishes to be a member of the new panel will have to go through the process, as currently captured in the bill. The Honorable Senator Kajwang's bill is a very, very important bill. Because remember, in NADCO, we haggled over the issue of the clamor for new counties, the review of county boundaries, and yet we came to the realization that the Constitution provides, first and foremost, for the establishment of that commission. Okay? That was our recommendation, that let the commission be established under the law for it to do its bit. The opening of the server. You will realize that in the NADCO report, we had agreed to the establishment of a panel of 6 persons to undertake a holistic audit of the 2022 elections, presidential elections. And we went ahead as Azimio to nominate our 3 persons, one of whom is Senator Judy Pareno. Of course, the others are Senator Amos Wako and one Julius Njirain. The Kenya Kwanza side, again, of course, also did their nomination, albeit too late in the day. They dragged their feet up to the very last minute. All the same, they did their nominations of their 3 panelists. However, this process has been stopped midstream. In fact, even before it took off by a court order, which was issued somewhere in Kiambu, I think. So we are fighting it in court for the order to be lifted, for that panel to be inaugurated, for it to do its work. So the issue of opening servers still remains alive as far as we are concerned. Finally, the issue of the bills, again. There is no issue of us starting with political parties and so on and so forth. Let all these bills be progressed. The 4 in the Senate must be progressed. The same way the 3 now remaining in the National Assembly must also be progressed. They must all be prioritized. Because they can be addressed, they can be handled, they can be processed concurrently or simultaneously. The political, and this year Senator Mazai will have to comment on this, or Senator Sifuna. The definition of parliamentary party, as was ably explained by Senior Counsel Otienda Mulu, it was lacking, it was missing in the original NADCO bills. NADCO did not define parliamentary party. The Joint JLAC Committee, in its wisdom, defined it. And that was one of the amendments that we agreed could be introduced in the IBC amendment bill. The definition, however, was limited to basically lifting it from the National Assembly signing orders. That therefore left out the bit of the Senate. My take, and I will be advised, my take is that as it is currently, we are safe with that definition. However, if there's room to make it uniform, that 5% be applicable both in the Senate and National Assembly, I have no idea. But we are totally opposed. To the idea of tampering with the current situation in the Senate, which is that a parliamentary party is a party with a minimum of 10 senators, from what I understand. Any attempt to bring down that number would create problems. Okay? It will simply create room for other small parties. Let me not call them small. Let me withdraw that. For some parties to want to be recognized as parliamentary parties and then cause us trouble in the manner they are doing in the National Assembly. So I'll leave it to senators. My take is that we are safer not making any further amendment to that bill as it is currently in the Senate. If you have to, please let's consult widely. Finally, the Honorable Dr. Oburu Oginga has spoken very eloquently on the matter of deemed and the registered. I just want to clarify, and you may help me, yes, that it is indeed true. Let Honorable Oburu listen to this, Ndiege. It is indeed true that we replaced the terminology deemed with the registered. But again, what is the implication of being deregistered? The implication is that once you are deregistered by a political party, on whatever ground, you cease to hold the elective position that you currently hold. In other words, once you are registered, you lose your seat. But then there's a caveat. You are given a window to appeal the decision. Under the Constitution, you know, it's everybody's right. But that window is not open-ended. It is 90 days. From the time you are registered by a political party, you have got a maximum of 90 days to go through the appeal process in court. Okay? That therefore doesn't create the usual mischief of people keeping us in court forever. And yet they have been deregistered. They have been deemed as before. Okay? That will help us really address the issue of indiscipline in our political parties. Thank you very much. Most welcome.
Thank you very much. As I ask Governor Nderitu to come, I just want to reiterate what Honorable Ndai is saying, although also give room to what Dr. Buru is saying to be looked at in detail, because we might have missed some details. But indeed, the current Article 103 says that vacation of office of Member of Parliament under 1I, as a member of a political party, the member resigns from the party or is deemed to have resigned from the party as determined in accordance with the legislation contemplated in Clause 2. Now, what we have done in the constitutional amendment, and I'm sorry, because we were lifting what we have in the bills to the constitutional amendment, what we now have under the constitutional amendment bill, under 103, is under I now, one vacates the office of a member of Parliament becomes vacant. Under I now reads, as a member of a political party, the member resigns from that party. No, I'm reading the wrong one. Let me read the right one. Resigns from, anyway, the point is that if you are deregistered now, you cease to be a member. And once, as Honorable Ndai says, you have exhausted those 90 days, then that registration takes effect, and therefore, you know. But we need, I've told Tony Muturi that we'll look at it so that any loose ends are tied the way Dr. Buru is saying. Governor Murithi.
I was asked by way of a note to say the three big things. Now, look, members, we apologize, it was brief. The leadership will organize a detailed briefing. The slides that we have prepared will in any case be circulated to you. I'm told it will be quite soon before you get back into debate. So the three big things: the VAT treatment is increasing the price of bread and allied products. It's also increasing taxes on financial services. The new taxes on motor vehicles will increase the cost of transportation. So those are the sort of three big things. But I leave it there. When we meet again, we'll go into detail. I also notice, of course, some Kenyans are inviting themselves to our event on Friday. So we should say that the accreditation of delegates is going on, and you know they shouldn't do that. we are accrediting professionals, business organizations, clergy, civil society. It is organized by political parties who are members of this coalition. That's really what all Kenyans should know. Political parties, but also other parties who are not members of this coalition. It's by invitation. We thank you very much. And Asante, I think Honorable Kioni will add to that. Yes, Makofi. Thank you.
Okay, now Honorable Zain, you can come and answer the questions that were directed to you on elections.
Prof, I use this one, huh? Yes. Okay, so a number of questions that have been asked. What I'll try to do is to cluster them in thematic concerns. And if I don't do justice to any of the questions, you could ask for a clarification. So let me start with the IBC amendment bill, which was introduced by senior counsel, and what they did at JLAC Departmental Committee. I would like to add the following details. Number one, there are two interrelated processes, actually three interrelated processes that will be contained in the IBC Act as part of our demands for electoral justice. So the first one is reconstitution of the IBC Commission. And I think that has been well articulated. There is not much one can add except the following. It seems there was a little bit of misunderstanding between the Political Party Registration Authority and the IBC Commission. And that is something that can be clarified very easily. But let me start with the IBC Commission. What is in the law is the process of reconstituting the panel. And then what is in the law is the improvement of appointment of commissioners. What is not in the law but is in the NADCO agreement is that the appointment process shall be based on consultations and concurrence between the leaders of the Kenya Kwanza coalition and the Azimio coalition. So I hope that is clear in terms of the IBC Commission. In terms of the Political Parties Registration Authority, Professor Adams has already readily admitted that there is room for improvement and alignment. This is the new word that is being used. If the other side is bringing good ideas, we should not reject them. We should evaluate them on the basis of the value of those ideas. And the same should apply to us. If we bring good ideas, they should also be open to listen and align. Only to have the following caution to finish this point. Don't open the window too ajar. You need to have the essence of the agreement and also a small window for good ideas for improvement. Okay? Now let me come to the question of the second component in terms of electoral justice. We've said you cannot have electoral justice if the full gambit of
the constitutional requirements are not implemented. One of the aspects that we have never used in the Constitution, no one has ever used, we are the first one to identify it, is in Article 884H. Under Article 884H of the Constitution, there are 3 processes that IEBC are supposed to facilitate. In our interpretation, and the correct interpretation, is that these 3 processes are outside IEBC. IEBC cannot do these processes. So what are these processes? Process number 1 is election observation. IEBC cannot observe its own elections. Process number 2 is monitoring of elections. Lo and behold, we have never opened up to say, what does monitoring of elections constitute? And there is great room in monitoring of elections to do due diligence to ensure that elections are credible. But the third and most important is the evaluation of elections. If IBC does an evaluation, that is an internal evaluation or internal audit. Under 884H, we demand that it is by an independent body. But having said that, then we must separate between 2 processes. The process of auditing the 2022 elections and the process of anchoring the institutional framework for any future elections. So the process of auditing the 2022 presidential election has been agreed in the NADCO process, and the leader of majority has explained in great detail that a panel has been constituted, and an eminent member of that panel is sitting with us. But I have an update from Advocate Tony Muturi saying that that case was going to be heard today, and we have people representing our interest and demanding that we need to be enjoined and be part of that case so that we can also submit what our position is. That is from the legal team. But what you find in the Elections Amendment Bill is how future audits will become automatic. They'll become automatic. No longer can somebody say pretty and say, we are the Supreme Court, we have made a determination, that's the end of it. No one can question it. They would know that there is an audit coming after every election. And this audit will be independent and not subject to control by IEBC. Now let me get to the next point in terms of electoral justice. We also negotiated and agreed that once the new commission has been appointed, they will institute a review of the work that has been done by previous commissions. Somebody says time. I will talk about time after I've made this point. And this point is this, that it will review the past performance of the Secretariat, the management, the commission, decision-making processes, and everything. And restructure, propose restructuring. And the report for proposals for restructuring will come to Parliament. If Parliament gives a seal of approval, those changes will be added. Now, I'm going to say something out of turn. Those who know me, they know I also speak out of turn sometimes. And I sometimes apologize in advance, so nobody can accuse me of not apologizing. Our leaders in the coalition, our leaders in Parliament, you have seen there is a demand for more consultations. and adequate time set aside for such consultations. And where we are going, and because majority of you are Christians, I'll use a Christian symbolism. We are going to the mountaintop. And where we are going require much closer consultations, much closer agreement on issues, and much closer agreement on tactics and strategies, including having an opportunity to go close by close. But having said that, I'll abide by the pressing time, including the very important activity that is going to be done in Mathare this afternoon, by ending with two submissions. My sister, Honorable Pareno, part of what you're saying will be captured in the restructuring. But part of it depends on us. Part of it depends on us. You know, some of these jobs are advertised. And if we do not mobilize and get people to apply with the right qualifications, you cannot cry afterwards after they have had skewed recruitment. Let me finish with a point which is the most important, and marks is a hallmark of the beginning of an electro cycle. That is two interrelated principles. One, acquiring of identity cards. We know that people start rigging by refusing to give identity cards to particular places in this country where they think that we have strongholds. So we must demand equality and equity in the issuance of identity cards. Why are identity cards important? Because you cannot register as a voter if you don't have an ID card. Simple logic, right? Then the next thing is registration of voters. So my sister, Senator Pareno, the register is going to be reviewed, but we must. Do you know that the continuous registration is going on? So we should be registering people if we are serious, because that forms who can vote in this country. Let me finish with Senator Omtata and related matters. Senator, we don't want to wanasema Waswahili, kwenye kuku wengi usimwage mtama. Sasa hatutaki kumwaga mtama mwingi hapa, lakini kusema hivi, elections zinakuishia at the polling station. I'm agreeing with you. At the constituency and at the county. Why county? Because that's where we say at least 25%. Bomas become superfluous. If results are going to be transmitted simultaneously to them and simultaneously to presidential candidates and all their agents, by midnight we should know the results. Latest 1 o'clock in the morning. And by that time, each constituency will declare the presidential results, and it will be published in the media. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Zain. Now I want to hand over the program to the Senate Minority Leader, Honorable Stuart Mazayo, who will handle this last part of the program.
Thank you. Asante. Waheshimiwa wenzangu, kwa sababu ya muda nataka kuchukua nafasi hii ambao pengine mimi ningeongea kumpatia katibu mkuu. Yes. Katibu mkuu ndugu yangu Sifuna, kwa muda mchache kidogo tafadhali njoo.
Thank you very much, Leader. In the interest of time, I'm going to be a bit fast and brief. I want to thank Dr. Annette for putting together this particular briefing, because in Azimio, it is important to know things. and to speak from a position of knowledge. We are the only coalition who does these things for our members of parliament so that they can debate and engage on issues from a position of knowledge. You will not hear a member of Azimio saying they voted for something they didn't read. And for that, I want to thank the coalition for always prioritizing knowledge. So mujipigie makofi nyinyi wenyewe. Number two, it is quite apparent that the time that is required to go through everything is not sufficient. So just like we requested the leadership to put together this one on the NADCO bills, on behalf of my colleagues, we are requesting that we do something similar on the finance bill, because that debate is going to be heavy in the coming days. And Dr. Annette, don't tire when we come back to you for us to hold those meetings. I will just say that it is quite exhausting for good people when bad people are in power, because it is quite clear that these people have unending reservoirs of evil. Every single day you wake up and they've conjured another silly idea or just bad ideas. And they say that we in the opposition are required to push back on these things. What I don't understand is, why can't you just do the right thing? Why not do the right thing? Although they say that the price of democracy is a ton of vigilance, these ones are overworking us by every single day, waking up with dumb ideas, with bad ideas, with very diabolic ideas. If you sleep and dream, your only dreams are how to make life even more difficult for Kenyans. Which other areas can you impart some pain on Kenyans until you get to the place where you are thinking of imposing taxation on bread and on motor vehicles, which are overtaxed in the first place? I think these people, we must give it to them. They really have depth when it comes to ways of hurting Kenyans. I will say two things and sit down. Honorable members, on this question of recognition of parliamentary parties, I want to plead with members that just like it was done in the National Assembly, that you lifted the definition from your standing orders, it would be also prudent for us to lift from our own standing orders in the Senate, because they already have provision for recognition of parliamentary parties, and the bar has been set at 10 members. I am hoping that I'll be able to convince my colleague from Kitui, the Honorable Senator Wambua, because I know that he has a different opinion. Honorable members, lastly, on the political parties funding, I want to say, as SG of ODM, that I am aware that, in fact, the last time we had a PG, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, if you remember, the Honorable Mulu, I think he's called, Makali Mulu, gave a briefing, and he had told us that at that particular point there was a proposal to return the 1.4 billion shillings for political party funding that had been in the previous budget. The information we are getting right now is that there is already a proposal from Treasury to cut that back to 600 million shillings for all qualifying political parties. So for me, really, the regret is that we did not take advantage of this process to ring-fence political party funding, because the idea by this regime is to cripple us. I can ascertain here that all our programs at the party have ground to a halt. I am in arrears in all my county offices for over 6 months, and I have 44 county offices. Honorable Kalonzo and the team, we must think of how we ring-fence the political party funding. Lastly, on the division of revenue, I want to speak on behalf of the Senate and tell members of the Azimio coalition in the National Assembly, we were extremely proud of the position you took on this matter when the debate came to the floor of the House. We in the Senate can see light at the end of the tunnel, because for the first time, this matter is not being debated as a matter pitting the Senate against the National Assembly. And I am hoping, honorable members of the coalition leadership, that when we go to mediation, the instructions on members of the Azimio coalition who will be in that mediation team will be to stand with devolution, to stand with the Senate, because the figures we have proposed of 415 billion to the counties is something we can justify, and we are prepared to do that. So I am hoping that you will support us. So, honorable members, I want to stop there to recognize that there was my colleague, the SG of Wiper. I saw her in the room, but she left. And therefore, I want to invite the SG of, yes? Yes, the SG of Jubilee, the Honorable Kioni, who will invite the leadership for the comments, and then we close. And on behalf of the leadership of Nairobi, I want to invite all of you to Mathare so that we can distribute the food that you have put together very generously for the people affected by the floods across the country. I thank you and God bless you.
I thank you for this opportunity. Nilikuja nimechelewa pengine, lakini nikiangalia kwa program kwa sababu hakuna mimi sikuwa nimechelewa. But I just want to say that this NADICO thing that we have been talking about, remember it was born out of maandamano, and KKK should never take it like it was a gift to us or it was a, they were doing us a favor. It is not a favor that they are doing to us, and where we have gotten as members of parliament, tafadhali mjue ya kwamba tumefika pahali ya kwamba you are now our last point of defense. We tried it in all those sittings, and if you members of parliament crack, if you are not able to give a pushback, then we will have a serious problem. Because NADICO was not a ceasefire process, and it was not a benevolent act or an act of mercy by the KKK government. Azimio called for maandamano after it was clear that KK had no intention of doing what the people wanted. They were certainly going against the wishes of the people. The cost of living has continued going up, and KK also embarked on a process of undermining multi-party democracy. Parliament, without doubt, was held hostage, and it became an executive Labanstap, as a result of which we called for maandamano as Azimio. Lives were lost, the nation was sick, and this gave birth to the NADICO process that we have. And the bills that have been given to us are with us. I don't need to go through them. But this forum was very important for us because, as I said, parliamentarians, you must take very keen interest in the bills that are before us. Parliament is our last line of defense. Kenya has been through these processes before. I'm trying to be very loud so that the member of the county assembly can also hear. Kenya has gone through these processes before, where the government uses the law to perpetuate themselves to power. Remember, we have heard them saying that they would want to use the process that is before us to ensure that, or to try and get William Ruto a termless term in office. One other observation that we need to make, that NADICO has afforded IEBC an opportunity to do boundaries delimitation outside the constitution timeline that expired on the 24th, in March 2024. But the question that we need to ask ourselves, and I can tell you, like senior counsel was saying here, wait for it, it is coming. How sure are you that this regime will not introduce amendments to violate constitutional timelines on the elections date? Colleague members of parliament, tafadhali nawaomba, umukienda kitanda kulala na hii watu ya KK, there is no other hope left for this country. The very true hope that is left is this widow of NADICO. Na Wakenya wale ambao wako na imani ya kwamba kuna jambo lolote linaweza fanyika after this, wanawaangalia. So don't lie to us that you are going for a project. Those are stupid old stories. When you talk to Kenyans out there, they are suffering, and when they hear you saying some of these things, they wonder which umeagushwa kutoka which planet. Na ndio naona sisi watu ambao wanakaa karibu na mlima Because how is it that we had 32 members of parliament? In fact, in Azimio, it was Azimio, ODM, and the next largest parliamentary party was Jubilee. It is ODM, Jubilee, Wiper, DAP in that right. And we find ourselves that it is very difficult for us to even feature on programs because our members took off. I know that is why you forgot me on the program. We are not able to feature in Azimio. Na wale wengine wakisema they are shareholders there, everybody can see that they are actually also strangers in government, in that regime. So hatuko kwa serikali, na hapa pia tunafinywa tunatoka nje. Lakini sio kwa ubaya, is because of bad manners by those people who are elected into parliament with a Jubilee ticket. And we have a whole region of Mount Kenya region that is not in government. By their own definition, unaweza angalia. They are actually inviting themselves to this Limuru thing, kwa sababu kule kumewaka joto, they have no stay. Na hapa pia tunajaribu kuona vile tutakaa. Kwa hivyo Friday, this is what has informed us and I want to tell you, what has informed us in the mountain is that our voice is lost. A block with almost 8 million votes is lost. And we meet on Friday, this Friday, at Limuru to do the Limuru 3. If you want to know where Limuru 1 was, it was there. There was Limuru 2, and we made some very fundamental decisions. Now, let me say this. Sane is saying that we are on this thing. We are saying that our revolution has started. Hatuna matumaini kwa sababu this is a disaster regime that we have in place. We start our revolutionary path on Friday, and we are starting it. It is actually our homegrown way of maandamano. Then we have the audacity to believe that the KK regime is not committed to fulfilling any of the promises that we have done, including enactment of the bills that we have talked about here. We believe they are not committed to that. They have continued overtaxing the people despite the NADCO report. They have indicated that the issues of cost of living is their preserve, yet the cost of living has continued to go up. And despite demands by KK, they have no intention, let me repeat, despite our demands, KK has no intention of opening the server. I know you missed this. The judge who gave the orders, the temporary orders stopping the opening of the server, is the same judge who gave orders to Sabina in the night to stop us from naming Mwenje as a deputy minority leader. This is a big scheme. It's a big scheme, and we are missing it. And I can tell you, you are dealing with a horrible, horrible group of people. They are actually a disaster. They have continued killing all sectors. Agricultural sector, top of the list. Fake fertilizer, and you now have back Linturi. Hata nyinyi pia ni watu wa maajabu. Linturi is back to talk to us. Eddie Boyle, that guy is inviting himself to Limuru. G2G, wizi tupu. Sugar scandal, housing levy, wanasema ongeza kodi ya rent ya hasara ili waweze kupata pesa nyingi ya housing levy. Hata wenda wazimu iko ndani yake. Wale ambao wanaelewa mambo ya development, lad. That is also another scandal. Davivi, as I finish. Davivi, 100,000 Kenyans are being evicted. Why? Kwa sababu Kulei ati aliuzia Ruto chamba ambayo iko na title that was given to Kenyans 1971, and we have the original title with the government seal. It is there. Oh, Mwenyezi Mungu. Egerton Lad, 2,000 acres taken by Sudi. He was ejected from there by watu na Michare. Ruai Siwalad imeenda. Disregard to court orders. Juzi tumeambiwa there is no vetting of IDs. We are now a borderless. I'm finishing. I'm just finishing. We have no vetting of IDs, so borderless. Goja 2027 mtachangaa wale walipiga kura wametoka wapi. They have been unable to heard of floods because it themselves is a disaster, and a disaster cannot declare another disaster a disaster. The Rimuru 3 that we are having on Friday, I want to conclude, is organized by political party leaders who are also members of Azimio and those who are not members of Azimio. Over 31 political parties have come together in that region. And we are calling ourselves together because we have come to a conclusion that there is no hope. The only thing we can do is to push back mpaka wakati yake ifike. Tafadhali nyinyi pia msaidie sisi. Shikilieni akina Sifuna. Don't allow these guys to collapse. They have collapsed everything and they are not going to help anything. If you have any iota of hope, wachana na hiyo. Tuombe Mwenyezi Mungu hii miaka 3 ikuiche kama jana. We throw them out. But we have to be very careful because they are also working kufanya hayo mambo yote. So I am saying we are going to be there. There are those leaders from our region who are also feeling, na wengine wanafanya biashara na si baya, lakini tafadhali wachana na hiyo biashara kidogo, kuja tuungane pale. Tomorrow we have a meeting of leaders who are saying have not been invited in Mount Kenya region, and we are telling them there is nothing. We are not going to say that there is a presidential candidate in Mount Kenya. Sio shida yetu. Shida yetu ni mambo ambayo tumesukumwa naye. How can we be able to push back? Na sio Mount Kenya, these are problems that are across the nation. We expect that after Friday, we'll be able to do these movements across the country. Jamani, we have a disaster in power. If you are not careful, they will make you a disaster. Your Excellency, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Your Excellency, SKM, Stephen Karonzo Musyoka. Karibu sana. Thank you so much.
Hey, Jeremiah. That is Jeremiah Kioni for you. If you are careful, if you are not careful, he might declare you also a disaster. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a phenomenal morning, and I agree with what Senator Sifuna has just said on behalf of so many of you, that we will need a bit more time, a bit more interaction. Therefore, a retreat is truly in order. So these are not strictly resolutions, but I think this is what you have picked up for what you have picked. And let me please get my reading glass. Thank you much. These are reflections out of what has happened. But on devolution, thank you, Simio. You want a picture? I need flanking, man. Too many men. I think I think they missed the network. They didn't get the full network. Thank you. Thank you. Kila mtu patch. Yeah, if you can't make it, embrace. Thank you so much. But on something that came out on devolution, are you members of parliament aware that there are regulations that are coming up in order to specifically undermine devolution, give primacy of place to village administrators under CS Interior? Watch out for that. What members have agreed is there must be clear timelines for the implementation of the National Dialogue Committee NADCO bills. And there's a proposal here to have this within 2 months. And on the constitutional amendment, 6 months. We are not talking about parliamentary months. We are talking about calendar months. 2 months for the bills that are 4 of them emanating from the Senate and 4 of them emanating from the National Assembly, and already the IBC amendment bill is already I think they're already onto second reading, and this is making progress. But the constitutional amendment, 6 months. These are products of a negotiated process, and we stress negotiated, that came because of the sacrifices of more than 72 Kenyans who lost their lives through the demonstrations. We can only honor them by doing the right thing. We urge you as Azimio legislators and those who want to be on the right side of history to be vigilant and thoroughly scrutinize all the bills that come to the committees and the floor of the House. Let us ensure that they do not claw back on all our negotiated gains. Thirdly, the Kenya Kwanza regime continues its avarice appetite for taxation. The new raft of taxes in the Finance Bill 2024, from bread to M-Pesa transactions and motor vehicle taxes, speaks to their callousness and inhumanity. I notice that Parliament has given the 28th of this month as the last day for those who want to submit their memoranda by way of public participation. The impeachment trial of the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture and Livestock Development, Mithika Linturi, was the biggest farce thus far. That 7 MPs could overturn the vote of 149 members of Parliament. How would you call this? It's absolutely ridiculous. Mr. Linturi should do the honorable thing and resign. Number 5, this is a clarion call to the Azimio fraternity and all Kenyans of goodwill that we are ready to exercise our constitutional right under Article 37 of the Constitution of Kenya. That is the right to peaceably assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petitions to public authorities. We thank Conrad Adenauer Stiftung for hosting us this morning. We continue to appreciate your partnership in broadening the democratic space in our country. We thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I think that our friend Jeremiah Kioni and the 31 political parties, we really applaud what you're doing. We really do. And we wish you well. So if you see us making a technical, know that it's because we really want to encourage you. Or if we don't show up in any way, you know we are still with you. It could be the beginning of a people's revolution. I thank you. But don't you feel that you are not, by the way, you know, Kioni knows, he knows this very well, and I'm sure he didn't mean what he said. He was not complaining. No. I know Jeremiah now so well that he was just trying to, that's why we made him head of the technical team.
Thank you very much. Allow me to invite Okango to give directions.
Okay, one more announcement. We have lunch that has been prepared for the guests. So members of parliament, please, before you leave, and the party officials that were invited, before you leave, please, there's upstairs, you'll have your lunch, and then you can leave at your own pleasure. Thank you. National anthem. Okay, national anthem.
Let's